Well, welcome back to Puck Watching. Excited to have you all back. We're back from a little vacation, Nick and I, but there's been a lot of different Blues games that happened since our Christmas Eve episode, which hopefully you enjoyed after we kind of just did more of a mid-season breakdown of the team since they got started. A lot of people made our naughty list and received some lumps of coal, we thought, this Christmas. However, there were some bright spots, but they did have to finish off the year of 2025, and they didn't do it so well. They went 1-2 in their last couple before the start of 2026, Nick, which now they're 2-0 in, which is exciting to say that we are undefeated in the year of 2026. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. Probably not. We'll see, because we got some big news heading into next weekend for us, but we'll get into that a little later. But Nick, check in with you. How are you feeling about this team and the 5 games that we've had since we've talked the last time, and the Christmas season and the New Year's? What's going on?
In the final hour of 2025, not very good. Not very good indeed. That was easily one of the worst games they've had all year. Colorado's a really good team. And then they also lost to the Sabres a couple of days before that. So they ended very badly. I know the Sabres were on like a 9-game heater. They were playing very good hockey. The Avalanche haven't lost a game in regulation this season yet at home. So that was something to note. It felt like you're kind of walking into a buzzsaw on New Year's Eve, and that happened exactly the way we kind of drew it up. They were down like 4-0 at the end of the first, and honestly, just no puck possession. So it was really worrying. I didn't expect us to be able to compete with them that much, but I expected maybe a little bit more effort. So that was tough to see. I did not have high hopes going into 2026 with the quicker turnaround playing in St. Louis against Vegas, who's also struggled recently. And then again yesterday against Montreal. They took me by surprise. They've been doing this. I don't know if you agree, but I feel like it's kind of objectively true. They've been doing this all year. They will lose a couple kind of bad games. Maybe one they'll lose in overtime, maybe not. They'll have 2 regulation losses, and then they will win 2 or they won't win 3. They won't win 3 games in a row. They'll win 1 or 2, but they'll beat a good team, and you can't help but scratch your head on. Doesn't really seem to be a lot of rhyme or reason around the hockey team right now, but they're not winning convincingly, right? Like they're not winning by more than 1 goal typically. I know they won by 2 yesterday, but it was a closer game than that. Montreal had some really good chances. Bennington played well. So very mixed bag. It's been that way for a few months now. I feel like it's just win here, lost there, and you're staying right around 500 right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the 2 wins that we had in 26, I mean, starting with the Vegas game, with what you were talking about. Let's be honest with ourselves. It was the same thing that has happened all season when the Blues win hockey games, besides the couple outliers with Montreal that happened yesterday, and the Florida Panthers game that happened a few weeks ago, and the one other which happened in against Buffalo the first time, where you win a game by more than 1 goal. And every single time that this team is winning hockey games, which is a great sight to see, I think the last 2 have been somewhat hopeful, I think, for me. But at the same time, you're not winning these games in a very convincing fashion. I think last night was a very evident example of it, because you had a game where the offense was really alive in the first period last night against Montreal. They played really well, and then tore a little bit in the second period, but then they started to die out and then rely on the goaltender, Jordan Bennington, who played absolutely outstanding last night and probably had his best performance of the year easily. I mean, the guy had 3.31 goals saved above expected last night, and the guy is still second last in the league in goals saved above expected, by the way. But what a bounce back for him last night, who I think this is just an entire discussion topic on its own, that Joel Hofer the last 2-3 weeks has been the Blues starting goaltender. And I think we sort of predicted that as well, based on the statistics, that he's giving you a better chance to win. And Bennington was sort of in the in the shadows with this team the last few weeks, and he gets a chance. And by the way, I remember I even said to you, the day of the Montreal game yesterday when we were flying back, I was like, if I was Montgomery, I would be starting Hofer again. And again, I'm glad that he didn't do it because Binnington, I think, got a lot of confidence from that, and you don't want to take it away from that guy. But it's still kind of something to consider. Is like, is this one game going to be something that he can do consistently? Probably not. So it's kind of a tough road.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really expect him to have that type of game like he did yesterday. He hasn't had, played that well in a long time, in my opinion. There, he stopped a couple of point blank chances. The Blues had a couple really last second clears as well, like right in their own crease. So, that was kind of a fluky type thing. He played a really, really great game. You can't take it away from him. I don't think we should be expecting him to play like that moving forward. Hopefully, you can get a more consistent performance. And Montgomery was interviewed after and asked about his play, Bennington, that is, and said that he feels that Bennington's played this way all year. There were a couple of exceptions, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't really agree with that. There's really no way you're going to be able to look at some of those stats by him, especially the goal save above expected, and think like, oh, it's just a couple games here and there, an off night, but mostly he's been really good. I don't really think that's the case. And Hofer's been more consistent and has really improved his game the last 2 months and started off obviously horribly,
Right.
like we've talked about before. But again, hopefully, this is something moving forward that Bennington can take in stride and start playing more consistent. But gutsy performance, honestly, by the Blues last night. And they, beat Montreal 2 times this year already and beat Ottawa 2 times. There's something about Canada that they just really play well against these teams. And it's kind of baffling to see at times because they're good teams.
And
So,
the issue with winning against these type of teams like Ottawa and Montreal, who are better teams on record than the Blues are, especially Montreal, that yes, you'll take all of these wins when you can get it, but these are Eastern Conference teams that it really doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things when it comes to overall like head-to-head playoff time against these teams like Vancouver or Calgary, which they've been successful against as well. But yeah, there is something in the water when this team's playing Canada. It's a great sight, but you can't really do it against teams in the U.S. because you get to these the games against Buffalo and Colorado, and then you just say an entirely different story. But I want to zero in on Colorado a little bit because I wasn't. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't a huge fan of watching Blues hockey on New Year's Eve. I just wasn't. There was a lot of other things that I wanted to spend some time watching and enjoying myself in rather than watching Blues hockey. But, I was happy that we were playing a game, I guess. But it kind of went exactly how you thought it would go, Nick. You said that this team would get destroyed. And remember, the last time you said that, you were very much proven wrong when they played Edmonton in the earlier parts of the season, I think in November. You said, yeah, this team may lose by 7. And you were very wrong there. But then you said, oh, yeah, this team would probably lose by 5 or 6 against Colorado, and you were damn right. So I don't know how we turned it off, by the way, after the second period because it was just atrocious. So thoughts on the Colorado game and just the debacle that it was throughout.
Yeah, I thought it was really predictable. You're on the road. You just had a bad loss at home against Buffalo. The Avalanche are the best team in hockey. That just wasn't the case when they played the Oilers. They just hadn't played well up to that game, but they were at home, so that always gives them an advantage. They're playing better hockey at home than they are on the road. It's not even that close, honestly. I think they're almost 500 now, or they are. They are a 500 hockey team if you include, the overtime losses, which I guess you don't if you win percentage wise.
Not for this.
But they walked into a buzzsaw. Colorado absolutely fleeced them in the first period. It was completely one-sided. I think the Blues, it was like midway through the second period. They only had like 5 shots on goal. Colorado had as many goals as the Blues did shots on goal. There was nothing that they could do to create any offensive momentum. They started to get a little bit more But I mean, I just think Colorado started to play a little bit looser and not care as much because I mean, it was an embarrassing performance and one of the more embarrassing ones that I can recall for a while. I think, but I mean, that's what happens when you play a really, really good team and you're not ready to play and you're missing a couple guys and that's what happens to poor teams. And I know on the I was gonna say on the on your playoff reference against Western Conference teams, because you're like, we keep beating Eastern Conference teams.
Yeah.
The Blues have the fourth most regulation wins in the entire Western Conference. So that being said, they will make the playoffs because of that, because they don't have a win in overtime.
Yeah.
So that's the stat that matters a lot. And that is one of the reasons that the Blues owned a head-to-head against Calgary last year, is because they had more regulation wins than they did. And that was the tiebreaker. It didn't eventually come to that. But at the same time, like, the Blues are in a good position if that is, if their trajectory is they're going to have, 90 plus points and be competing for wild card too. They're good to go. So I just thought it was funny when I saw it on Twitter today that the fourth most regulation wins. And it's just wild because given all the OT losses that they've had and just their stats are just abhorrent, right?
Yeah.
So no one would predict that they would be in this position. But I wanted to throw that out there because it's very funny. It's a very, very funny stat because they win in regulation and they lose either in overtime or regulation as well. So it's crazy.
No, I mean, you look at the rest of I didn't know that it did that, but it makes sense, I guess, looking at it. You haven't had a win in overtime, but you still have 17. And but we have two more wins than the last place team in the Western Conference, which is the Winnipeg Jets now. Surprise. I mean, ever since that win against them, they just have been on the decline. They were, I think, maybe a point above us or something like that when we played them. Yeah. And now they've worked all the way down. They're now 15, 21, and 4. And that was the President's Trophy winner last year. That's a fall from grace if I've ever seen it. And I guess, I mean, I never thought I would say that there's probably a team where that the Jets are probably the team in the Western Conference that are playing to the worst of expectations, further than the Blues for sure, which is so surprising.
I thought they were going to take a step back. I think I said that in the predictions. I did not think they were going to be in the top 3 in the Central, and they started off better, but they have really fallen off. It's actually crazy when you look at the standings, how far away they are now. So they must have, I haven't been watching them since only our game that we played a couple weeks ago, but they must have just lost. Like, it's almost seemingly every game, given how far down in the standings they are. And the Blues are just like, they're losing ground. They chip away, they lose ground, they chip away. It's, it's a very different trajectory than a lot of teams right now, but the top 3 in the Central they're stapled in, they're locks, and we're only talking about wild card 2. It feels like at this point.
Well, that's what they were saying in the broadcast last night, and they're like, that top 3 in the Central is pretty much locked up, and honestly, not surprising either. I think those are the 3 teams that we even said in the preseason that we're going to probably lock those spots up. But the Pacific, by the way, is what's a really, really bad division right now. I mean, we've always talked about how the Blues are pretty bad in goal differential, which, despite having 42 points and being only 1 point out of a wild card spot, they are at a minus 39 goal differential. I don't even know how that's possible. And the only way I can point to it is that wild card and the Pacific Division, how bad that they are. Look at this. The number 1 team in the Pacific, which is the Oilers right now at 46 points, they have a minus 4 goal differential. Vegas a minus 1, Anaheim a minus 7, and then it works down from there. There is no Pacific Division team that has a plus goal differential at all, which is the best scenario for the Blues to still make a sort of run here. And
I think I saw something yesterday that it said that West has the 8 worst teams in the NHL, 5 or 8, I forget, and the 3 best teams.
Yeah.
So, like, the parity is not even close to what it usually is. And there's just a lot of average to below average teams that, because of that, the wild card's going to probably be pretty close for a long time throughout the entirety of the season. So it's so strange because the Blues have been, mostly really bad almost the whole entire year. And they are still right in the thick of the wild card. And if they can just manage to manifest a little bit of that magic that happened last year and just win like 4 in a row. Let's start at 3. Let's get to 3. Well, let's call it 3 and win a couple of those big games. And you don't even have to go on a 12-game win streak. You can go on like a 4 or 5-game win streak. And then you can really start thinking like, hey, this is going to be potentially a playoff team.
Yep.
But you do have to assume that other teams are probably going to start winning more games. But so far, I mean, we're more than halfway through the seasson for the Blues. And that has not happened. No. So it's crazy to look at the NHL in the West this year.
The last place team in the Eastern Conference, Columbus Blue Jackets, 42 points, the same amount of points as the Blues.
Yeah. Right. And that stat that I said too, Luke, that is true actually.
Yeah.
the top 3 in the Central have more points than any top team in the East.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the worst teams in the West have, besides the Blue Jackets, have the least amount of points in the whole NHL. Man, that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
I think Colorado is they're at 69 points already in the halfway point of the season. I think from what I saw, they are on pace for, I think, 6 points more than what the Bruins did 3 years ago when they were like the perfect season, where they had the best season in NHL history. And when they lost in the first round after that,
they've won 10 in a row.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
And by the way, with the Wild are 11 points out from them, and they have played 3 more games than Colorado.
Also, really, I know we mentioned the Sabres briefly too.
Yeah.
But the Sabres won 9 games in a row, and they're still not in a playoff spot.
Yeah, that's
that's crazy to me. Oh man.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't know how we really deviated to that, but it's just wild considering the differences in the conferences right now. And the Blues are actually a favorable spot. If like it would not be the same. I think we would be looking at this. I think this is why Doug Armstrong still hasn't made any really big moves yet, or at least hasn't been talk of it, because he knows that this team is kind of still in the thick of it. And that there's some really important moments in this schedule coming up that could also really sort of change things as well. I mean, after that game against Montreal, now you're right back in the Western Conference again, and you're playing these mid-tier teams. You're not playing the Dallases or the Minnesotas or Colorados in the next couple weeks. You're playing those. They're playing those Nashville type teams. Utah, who's right below us right now, is coming up. Chicago's this week as well. And then obviously Vegas, who's only 3 points out from us right now, yet they're sitting in the second place spot in the Pacific. So it's favorable. It's sort of hopeful, which is why I sort of put hope in our little title here, even though I didn't say it in our Christmas episode where there wasn't really much hope with this team.
No,
but there is some.
Especially after New Year's Eve. I thought it was kind of over, but again, they just keep, responding with these 1-goal wins or 2-goal wins last night, some good goaltending and, putting away a few goals. But this week, and I think I've probably said this a few times, but this is potentially the most important week of the season so far.
You say that every week, dude.
But in this instance though, Chicago, I mean, they're all on the road. So, you're going to have to get a few points regardless. But these are the teams that Chicago's a little bit further behind, but not by much. So, and you're on the road against Chicago, you're on the road against Utah, on the road against Vegas, all teams that you have beaten already this year. So I just think if they were able to win 2 of 3, or gosh, God forbid, go on a 5-game win streak and beat all 3 of those teams, the vibes for this hockey team would be extremely high. Extremely high, because you're not beating, Colorado or Edmonton, but you're beating teams that you will be fighting against for a playoff spot. So I just think they would go such a long way for the mentality of the team. So I do think it's a critical stretch. I guess it's not the most important in the week because I say it every week, but whatever. I think it's extremely critical. So I'm excited. I'm excited. But the schedule is so difficult. The rest of the month, like if you look at it, it's Carolina, it's Tampa Bay, it's Edmonton, it's Winnipeg's not good, but Dallas, LA, Dallas, like these teams are legit playoff teams and cup contenders. So this is kind of the weaker part of January now. And I
Yeah.
thought it would be a little bit tougher, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
So I think it's huge. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah. The issue is with like kind of getting ahead of ourselves here is that, I think no matter what, you have to always look at that Colorado game as a basis for how this team can stack up against the best teams in the NHL, which that team is the best team in the NHL. And probably there's no team that's going to stop them throughout the rest of the season. But just the way that they played that game. And I don't know if there was just an absolutely atrocious game that the Blues played paired with just an average Avs game or an above average Avs game. I don't watch Colorado because I know that they're probably going to have a win or at least an OT every single time that they play a game. But you went down 4-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game. And it would have been 5, by the way, for without a goal overturned after I think in between the second and the third. And they still got 4 with a goal overturned. It's absolutely crazy. And just the way that they came out very flat, and Colorado was humming like they always do, and they just started piling up goals left and right.
Mhm.
And you can, and this is a situation, and they were saying on the broadcast that I hate that Jordan Binnington started that game because it is not at all his fault of what happened. There was just no team no team that was working in front of him to support him whatsoever. I mean, there was one goal scored in that game in the third from Dvorsky, but that's it. They had 13 shots on goal. It's just not going to win you any sort of hockey game whatsoever. But the fact that they were able to control them so well when Colorado really didn't have much to play for after that second period, they already won the game. It was 5-0, but they just kept getting dominated. And so concerning, dude. So concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bummer. I do think they were just kind of walking, to their grave that night. It just didn't feel like the vibes were going to be there. They had to come out perfectly, I think, in that first period to not be trailing after the first period. It's just kind of one of those teams right now. And I mean, I, feel for Bennington in that situation as well. I thought he did not receive a lot of help. But if we believe in analytics and advanced stats,
Here we go.
the Colorado Avalanche only had 3.26 goals expected, and they scored 6. So it's not like he played, awesome. But however, they were never going to win that game, even if you use those advanced stats. I'm not trying to throw Binner out to dry there because he played really, really well the following day. So, I just think those games are going to happen against those good teams, especially on the road. If you have a team like that in Colorado coming to St. Louis and you get beat 6-1, that's a different story. If you can't play with the best teams at home with, your home fans behind you, we have to start talking about that more. But when you're on the road, you have a couple players out. I think you're going to excuse that one, especially with the way they responded after that. They could have thrown in the towel. You have to give them some credit there and just see what they can muster up moving forward. Once they get Holloway back, you get Walker back, Bukestad back. I know those timelines and timetables are a little bit blurry, but you got to think that maybe they can put something together given how close they are to a wild card. So you got to feel more optimistic than upset. But you're right. The floor is certainly low. Just given what we saw on New Year's Eve.
And just the ceiling is not high either.
No.
It's not. And I think there were times last season where we saw more of a ceiling, at least in that November, December range, even before this team started to get hot. You just saw that this team they weren't doing this where you lose games like 6-1, or even when you lose games like 5-2, or 4-2 against Buffalo, you still get dominated the whole time.
Yeah.
So they just didn't really do that last year. At least you knew that this team sort of had a chance in these games, and they didn't always rely on the goaltending as much as they do. But again, I will say with the 3 wins that we had of the two, I mean three wins of 5 is great for this team. By the way, never wasn't 3 in a row, which never has happened this year yet. But again, it feels better to say 3 of 5 for sure. But in those three, in those, at least the I would say the Vegas and the Nashville game where you won by 1 goal, it was just always, I thought they played well in these games, but it's not like that they're blowing these opponents out of the water ever. We just say it time and time again, but it's just, that's one of the things that I just don't know if it doesn't change in 3 months. How can it really change that big, at least have that big of a difference 3 months from now when we're in March and we're fighting for a playoff spot and you didn't really show that you were capable of this? Maybe it can just do a complete 180 from now until then. But I just don't really see that happening because they just have never shown that ceiling of dominance. And I want to see it so bad. I think maybe the Panthers game was that one time, and the Panthers aren't really that good right now. So
Mm.
I just am more concerned about that out of anything else. That when we're winning these games, it's always just kind of by the skin of our teeth here, and that we never really show that. Yeah, maybe we can dominate a period, but we can't dominate a game, and it's hard to do it in the league. It's just this team has never shown it.
Yeah, no, the ceiling this year seems much lower than it was last year for one reason or the other. I know we've had our fair share of injuries, but it's not as if, when we were healthy, they were, blowing teams out. If anything, we may have actually been worse. So, I mean, just to paint a picture too, Jay Fresh Hockey comes out with all these new advanced stats. So just to walk through a few of them, because the season is not just a goal differential; it's an entire body of work, and there are a bunch of stats that you can throw out that would put them in mostly a bad light. But these are, for more or less objective. So, five on five expected goals percentage is 49%. It's 23rd in the league. 5 on 5 expected goals for per 60 minutes. So, how many goals on average they're scoring a game? That is 27th in the league at 2.37. Something that I don't really think a lot of people understand, because they like to just throw, the defense kind of under the bus and the goalies under the bus. But the 5 on 5 expected goals against per 60 minutes, this is as of January 4th, and it's the whole entire season, is 2.46. That's 7th in the league. Like, that's a very, very good stat. And you would think we would be able to win a couple more games as a result of that stat. And then if you go to team finishing on goals scored above expected, we're at -0.7. So that's kind of concerning too, because it's not like we're leaving a bunch of goals out there. It's not as if you're I think the Hurricanes had a really bad one. Gosh, what was that? Yeah, the Hurricanes have left 13 goals out there. They've scored 13 less goals above expected. If that was like the Blues stat, I'd be like, all right, they're just not finishing. No longer is that really the case, and you can't really point to that. So that's something that's concerning. They're not getting as many attempts, not grade A chances. But the problem is, and we keep going back, I keep going back to this stat because it sucks. But the goal differential above expected is -30.7, and that's last in the league, by the way. And the goaltending is the primary contributor to that stat, because it's -30 still in the NHL. And I know people like to gripe on how bad the defense is, the offense isn't scoring. Those are true. Like, those are for the most part true. But the goalie stat, I don't really think we should be looking past that, and because it's been like that the entire year. And of course, we've had some better play. But we got to be honest with ourselves here. If we did have slightly better goaltending to start the year, I don't think the Blues would be in this spot and we'd have more optimism. I know they have played better, and the other facets of the team have taken a step back. But every time you go back to those stats, goaltending is the main contributor on why they're so far in the negative and the goals above expected.
Yeah.
So it's just a bummer. But those stats bear it out that the Blues generally just aren't very good, with the exception of the team defense per 60 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's it there. And I it's hard to. I mean, that's just like 8 different stats that show some really blurry pictures and not so great pictures. I think at the for the Blues in this one. I think, but one of the things that I saw as well that you probably saw in that stat too is that you were talking about defense and Parayko and Broberg
Yeah.
is people can criticize him all they want that Parayko hasn't had a goal this season or that Broberg hasn't been contributing offensively as much as we've wanted, but defensively they are the best pairing in the league when it comes to the amount of games that they've played and the amount of goals per 60 that they let up, and they are number one in the league, 2.52. And there is no other defensive pairing that is coming close to that. And the one that is about 18th that yet they don't play the amount of minutes that these two do but when they were together was that Fowler and Falk duo. They were about 2.42, but they've changed up the bottom four pairings a lot. They wanted to get Fowler and Mayu together, and they wanted to get Falk and Tucker together, or Falk and Kessel, or whomever that person may be. So they've tried to kind of balance that out because that big liability earlier on in the season and throughout this more recent stretch has been that bottom pair, no matter how you put it. And so I think the answer to a lot of our questions here, and you said the goalies and the forwards, but defensively they have a very solid top pairs. They just do. And I think, especially with Falk now kind of contributing offensively, he's the number one goal scorer on this Blues team now as of January 3rd, which is just, it's great for him, but terrible look for the hockey team itself. That a defenseman like Justin Falk, who's not a formidable goal scorer, he's an offensive defenseman, but nowhere near that level any of the past couple seasons. He's your guy this season over a guy like Kyrou or Thomas or Buchnevich or anybody. He is better than them. It just is it's a very weird and just unique picture that this Blues team is sort of spelling out stat wise that doesn't make a lot of sense judging from their play, but here we are kind of.
Yeah, it's very strange and concerning, but they've just been filling holes for the last, month and a half since the injury bug hit them, and they still have Fabry playing. They have Bergen, getting some valuable minutes, scoring a few goals here and there. Mayu is shuffling in and out of the lineup. So is Tucker. So is Kessel. They're just trying to, I think, kind of survive. It seems for the last month, it's definitely been a game of survival. And then, I think Montgomery does believe, and I think you kind of have to believe if you're a fan or the coach, that if they survive this and they're just a couple points out or in the second wild card, that they get these guys back and they start piling up points and making a really big, hard push.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. They're not going to dominate with their current team. I don't think they're going to dominate in general, but I think they could play more consistent and play better hockey like we saw more last year, post Four Nations. Maybe we don't expect it to that level, but all these players are pretty similar. You've seen what they're capable of doing, and if they just can manifest, a little bit of that, I think they should be in a better spot than I think most people are thinking right now. But you don't have Dylan Holloway, you don't have Nathan Walker, you don't have Bukestad. Obviously, Holloway would be the most important piece of that, but you can't discount what Walker's done for the Blues and his physicality and even goal scoring here and there. And Bukestad, you need a big body like that too to create some havoc. And I hope those guys get back. And until then, you can kind of just wish that they can stay afloat, and they have so far. But there's no doubt, like if their top players like Kyrou and Thomas are not going to produce, I think Rob's been playing a little bit better, but of course, there are games where he just looks primarily absent. He just does. So that's a problem. And Kyrou's always been like that, right? Like he'll score in these spurts, and then you're like, is he playing tonight? Is he healthy? So it's not the dynamic you want with your top players, but they're a team type of hockey club. They're not individuals that are going to account for all these goals and assists like McKinnon or McDavid or, in those specific teams that they play on. So That's the concern. And when you don't have that depth scoring and you don't have people that are healthy, that's when things start to fall apart.
Yeah, and Kyrou hasn't scored since he's come back yet, which
Yeah,
is
that's
not good at all.
no.
He's been back for 5 games and he hasn't scored yet. And there was a time I forget in which game it was, maybe the Buffalo game, where I think he sat most of the third period.
Yeah,
And I don't blame Montgomery for doing that at all, because you need something from a guy like him, who's your $8.1 million player with Thomas, that that you're going to have to rely on every single night to contribute a lot offensively, whether it's through goals or assists or whatever. He's just not generating much for this team. And
Mhm.
I wish we could say differently, because earlier on in the season, I thought that, you scratched him that one time, then he got a goal in the next game. And I think he started to come back a little bit. But then that injury really sort of sidelined him and for a good amount of time. And, he comes back and he's just not doing anything right now. Maybe he's not fully healed from the injury. Maybe he is. He's just not there yet as a player. I don't know what. But that is one of the, I think, bigger things, that if Kyrou can sort of get going here, along with the team that's just still not really doing much offensively. Remember, that Vegas game that they scored 4 was the first time they had done that since that Florida game on the 20th, when they scored 6. They don't score amount those goals like other teams in the NHL do. So you got to get something more from him, and from one of his partners, Buchnevich, by the way, who had a 2-goal game in this 5-game stretch. He had that 2-goal game against Nashville, I think, right? Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his first 2-goal game, by the way, and I want to get this right, since October, I forget the exact date, but I know it was October of 2024 against the Vegas Golden Knights. And he hasn't had a 2-goal game until that Nashville game since then, which is, I mean, I don't know. Like it definitely shows just how he has just regressed so much in the
Yeah.
goal scoring column. And he just doesn't score goals in bunches like that anymore, which is very sad. You would definitely expect that maybe a couple times a season, but knowing from the stats, this may be his one time that he does it. I hope he can find a way to get some more like that. But it's something that is another thing that maybe with all this offense sort of struggling around Kyrou, that maybe this is sort of affecting him too. So I think a bunch of things that is affecting this offense.
Braden Shen has more goals than Buchnevich and Kyrou.
Yeah, that's
probably not a good sign that your team's playing very well.
Yeah.
So he has 3 goals in the last 4 games. Got to give him some credit.
Ever since that daughter.
Yeah, the bump there, having a child. But there's just no reason that should ever be the case. Braden Shen's like 33, 34 years old, been in the league for a long time. Kyrou and Buchnevich should not be being beaten out by someone like that. And no shame to Shen. He's playing, better hockey, but come on. It's unacceptable. You're going to have to play better than that.
Yeah, and you're right with Shen. I think since in the last like 2-3 weeks, I've definitely seen a little bit more improvement from him, just having to really call upon somebody to kind of carry this offense at times, and not the person who you want to call on, but he's sort of answering the call, which is nice. But one of the great things about him, though, is not just the goals, is also his faceoff percentage individually. I think he's I don't know the exact I got it. Yeah, Shen 54.4% on his season thus far in the faceoff dot, 25th in the league from him. So need a guy who can be able to win you some faces. I remember yesterday he was winning those faceoffs on his dominant side in that left faceoff circle in the offensive zone that can really help out this team. Just figure out some ways to cycle, establish possession in the offensive zone, because if you don't have those faceoffs, like Thomas is your only other guy right now that's above 50%. So that is, I guess, a subtle stat that a lot of people don't realize in these games, but it's super important to call upon guys to give you your sort of possession to, again, try and figure out ways to score afterward. So yeah, Shen stepping up to the plate, and I love to see it, but it's not what this team is absolutely needs in order to succeed more.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Critical stretch coming up. I don't care if they win by 1 goal for their next 3 games. If they win all 3 of those games, doesn't matter how they win right now. It does matter that they play better, more consistently.
Yeah.
But I just think for them right now, it is about surviving. It's about scratching and clawing out wins. Is exactly what they did the last 2 games. Just don't fix what isn't broken right now. Keep playing like they're playing, and it's going to get tougher to play like that on the road. But you have to get a couple wins here this week, and I think that's a good segue, Luke, on what we want to talk to the people about there.
Well, yeah, but before we do that,
Yeah.
I also wanted to say one of the trends that I noticed here, Nick, among the games when I'm looking at the stats after these games, and I think for the average person that is not looking at this, I think it's kind of hard to notice because it's sort of deep in the after the game stats here. So game after game for this team, 17, 18, 20, 17 again giveaways
Mm.
that this team does. And every single time, no matter in the Nashville game that they won, no matter in the Montreal game or in the Vegas game, they always have more giveaways than their opponent. And I don't know, maybe you can figure out ways around those things. But imagine if you just got that number to equal or got that number down to 5 or 6 below 17 like that. Imagine what that can do for your team, not turning over the puck like that and just giving it away, especially in the offensive zone, which we gave Falk a lot of credit earlier on, but when we were talking about him in Vegas, Nick, it was a poor performance against Vegas, I should say, by Justin Falk. A couple offensive zone turnovers from him that really almost cost that team a lot more in that Vegas game. But he's obviously, I don't know who leads the Blues in giveaways. I think that's a hard one to sort of find there because they would never show that on the Blues website. But he's got to be up there in that as well as some of the other defenders. But that's something that I think if they can figure out, just minimize it by a little bit, you can give yourself a lot more chances, I think, especially in those goals against, in those 4-goal, 3-goal games. The Colorado game is a complete outlier. They had 20 giveaways in that game, which is just atrocious. And a lot of them came in that first period, but still terrible.
Yeah, their giveaways are atrocious. You always try to figure out who the primary culprit of the giveaways are, because you see defensemen all the time on the Blues. They're sitting back, they win a puck or something like that, or it's going along the boards, and there's really no one to pass it to. And then you have a forward on the other team, coming up on them, starting to pressure, and it's kind of too late to flip it up in the air and get it across the blue line. So they have to send a pass somewhere, and usually it ends up not going in our favor. So it does seem like that's such a recurring theme. And it's hard to separate whether that's just our bias of watching it all the time and seeing how badly they can play. And it's like, gosh, we're the worst team at this and that. And sometimes it's true. And just like how we thought about how our penalty kill is actually consistently like one of the worst penalty kills in the NHL, we were right about that. Yeah. And the giveaways also seem to be that way as well. And you just have to wonder, like, is it the defenseman not being able to clear the puck? Are forwards not able to clear? Like, it's such a weird thing. And you feel like coaching will be able to clear some of those problems up, but it does not seem like it gets better game by game.
Yeah. And I feel like all it takes maybe is just a little simplifying. I don't know. Like a person like Justin Falk, when he's in the corner, don't probably pass it to the middle and just to the center of the ice. Probably not a great idea, especially when you have a team going off the change and charging the offensive zone. Probably not the best thing to do. Same with, by the way, Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington, who are always going these dangerous passes, which are high risk, high reward. If it goes, then you're going to be in a great spot. And that's one of the Blues sort of MOs among their goalies in the last couple of years. They are one of the best puck moving goaltending tandems in the whole league, probably the whole league. And that's a strength, but at times when it goes badly, it can definitely be an issue. Now, the big picture stat, Nick, which I think is the answer to your question, is that the Blues are the 5th worst team in the NHL at clean defensive exits. 78%, 78.8%. And there's some teams that are kind of out of a playoff spot. I don't remember the other teams on it, but Like I think it was the Bruins that were the last place team in the league. They're not in the playoffs right now in the Eastern Conference. Now they're a little closer than we are, but still, it's glaring that a team that does that, unable to clean their zone off from the defensive zone, probably not giving yourself the best chance of winning, and that usually means that your defenders aren't doing their jobs. In terms of those turnovers, but we've also seen that some defenders are also playing well for this team. So,
yeah, I do have the stats on that. Broberg leads the Blues in giveaways this year.
Okay.
And Thomas is second with 58. Broberg's at 60. Parayko's has 52.
Okay. Where's Logan Mailloux on that list? Is he on there?
He is, but 24, so he doesn't have as many.
He's just not on the ice enough.
He's not nearly on the ice enough for giveaway. So that's why you have to be careful with that stat. Mm-hmm. But Robs are very noticeable.
Yes.
They're really noticeable. And it doesn't really matter where he's on and like where he's at on the ice. He turns the puck over everywhere. And it's because he's generally trying to make pretty crazy plays at times, and at times where you wish he probably wouldn't try to make, but it happens almost all the time in the offensive zone, like multiple times a game it happens. So he would be easy to predict that would be at the top of the table in giveaways for them.
Yeah, no, that's not surprising. And but with Broberg and Parayko, though, those are your guys that are getting the most ice time every single night. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it down here. So with the time on ice per game, Broberg, Parayko, and Falk, they're all in the top 40. 31st, 39th, 40th in that order. And Broberg, though, has been just consistently getting so many minutes every single night. He usually leads Parayko, who is his defensive partner, and usually leads him by like 3 minutes in the last 5 games, which is really interesting. And I love this for Broberg, and I get that he's the giveaway guy, but he's on the ice the most out of anybody by a long shot. So you got to give him some leeway there, but he is an Olympian, and he was chosen over. And we were talking about this over Matthias Ekholm from the Oilers, who is another Swede, and it was on the Four Nations squad, but got snubbed for a guy like Broberg. But he's a part of the best defensive pairing in the league. So you probably, as the general manager for Sweden, probably got to acknowledge that. And he's also on a really bad team right now. That's the Blues. So get this guy with a bunch of stars who he's playing with. That looks like from the projected lines, he's playing with a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who is, when you looked at last year, who would have ever thought that Philip Broberg would be playing with a guy like Ekman-Larsson, who's been in the league for a long time and has had a lot of success. And now he's sort of in that reign of elite defenders, it sounds like, among Sweden. I think kind of all in the NHL, which is, I think, one of the few sort of bright spots that despite this season, despite the giveaways that you were just citing, that a lot of it has to do with the type of team that he's playing on, it sounds like.
No, it's true. Yeah, no false things said there. If he was on a better team, I'm sure it wouldn't happen, and he plays a lot. Yeah, so those things are going to happen regardless.
Yeah, no, but super exciting there, and also the Olympic things that, and after the sort of January schedule from the Blues, we are going to transition to a lot of Olympic coverage, and it's going to be super exciting. And I kind of hope that Jordan Binnington doesn't play at all. If for Canada, it sounds like he won't, because the stats just speak for themselves there. He's in the 870s compared to guys like Logan Thompson and Darcy Kemper, who are all chosen with him, that he's probably going to be a third option for the team. Maybe he starts, and that'll surprise the hell out of me, but I don't think it'll happen. But I'm just excited, though, to say, all right, if when the U.S. plays Canada, which hopefully they do, that we won't have to be looking at Jordan Binnington and kind of having a soft spot for him, but also knowing I want to score a lot of goals on you, because I also want him to gain more confidence. But I don't think we're going to have to deal with that. Maybe I'm wrong. But a lot of controversy, though, with a lot of these Olympic lineups, especially with Team USA right now, with snubbing guys like Jason Robertson and for a guy like, Vincent Trocheck, who's on the team, or JT Miller. But we're super psyched for that. And we'll but any other thoughts with the Olympics that you kind of saw with the rosters coming out the week?
No, I mean, not particularly. It's cool that Broberg is on Sweden. Very happy for him. Parayko making it again. I think he's deserved it. I think the Bennington saga was very funny. There's
Yeah.
clearly a large contingency of Canadians that do not like Jordan Bennington. And for the life of me, I don't really understand why, because he's actually played pretty well for them for the most part. And I know that they don't like his antics in the NHL at times, and that's a common theme for anyone that's not a fan of the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah.
But in terms of, being good for your country, you'd think they'd be more excited. I know the stats aren't great for him this year, but he won you guys the Four Nations
Yeah.
tournament last year and played
Yeah.
really, really well in that last game. And
Yeah.
they could have easily gone home and lost to the US
Yeah.
later in that game if it
Mhm.
weren't for Bennington. So I
Mhm.
think all of that is kind of funny to watch from afar. But I don't even know if he's going to be starting, just given how badly his stats have been this year. So we'll see how that plays out. But
Yeah.
they always, point to the Armstrong relationship with Bennington
Yeah.
and the Blues in Canada. So it's whatever.
Yeah, they had the 3 Blues there with 2 in Canada, and 1 on Sweden with Broberg, and then it sounds like I haven't heard the confirmation though, but Dvorsky is gonna be on Slovakia. Haven't seen the roster yet for them, but he's I think one of 4 or 5 Slovakians in the NHL, so he has to be on that team too.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be about five Blues players. They're going to be on that Olympic on the Olympic rosters, which is super exciting to see. And I think that for sure, Parayko and Broberg will absolutely be playing every single game for both of those squads. I think in any scenario, you could say that. And Parayko, much less pressure on him, probably playing on its third pairing for him, which I think is going to be a very nice side for him not to having to be playing in these against these top lines every single night, even though they kind of are. That he's what he's going to be playing with against Canada. So
Yeah.
there's not much wiggle room there. But yeah, I wanted to touch on the Olympics a little bit. But yeah, this sort of wraps up kind of our conversation with the Blues. But we're super excited though for this upcoming weekend. So I got one more week here in St. Louis, and I'm heading on a plane with Nick Koenig, and we're going to be going to Salt Lake City, Utah, for the Mammoth versus the Blues on Friday, this upcoming Friday. And then we're going to be taking a 5.5 hour drive
Mm-hmm.
to Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City, to watch the St. Louis Blues play the Vegas Golden Knights at T-Mobile for on Saturday. So it's going to be a really fun trip. We're going to be bringing you guys a ton of content. But we kind of said it earlier that this is such an important part of the Blues schedule. And I think the same, by the way, for fans in Las Vegas and fans in Utah, that I mean, these are equally as important games for these teams. So I think this will have some more, I think, heated sort of games as we head into next weekend. So I think we'll make for some good content, Nick, I'd say.
100%. I'm very excited. It is pretty cool the way this shaped out, because you were kind of afraid that they're going to be so bad that this trip really wouldn't even be worth it. But they've definitely won a couple games to make this one a lot more interesting. And Salt Lake City, never spent any time there before. Pumped to go check that out. Heard it's great. Staying right by the arena. And Vegas is Vegas. Been there many a time. And it's going to be a blast. And I've never seen a Knights game before. So, two great venues and playing two decent teams, so very, very excited for this weekend.
Yeah, and also I just never would have thought, if I was living like when I initially was starting to watch hockey and living through the NHL, never would have thought that I would be really hyped to go to Salt Lake City and Las Vegas, Nevada to see NHL hockey. I mean, Utah's their second year in Salt Lake City. They were formerly in Arizona. And I'm just more interested to ask fans, if we're going to be bringing this content, like, how does it feel to be a hockey fan? And like, how does it adjust to literally your only other team that you have? Well, I guess you have an MLS team for ball watching perspective, Real Salt Lake or something. But you also have the Utah Jazz, but that's it. So it's not. I just never really would have thought of as a hockey market, but here we are. And Vegas the same way, except they're an entirely different thing. They've missed the playoffs one time since entering the league, and they've been dominant since their inception. And they made the Cup final in their first year, and then won it in 23.
Mhm.
But it's just I'm super excited to be a part of that environment because Vegas fans, you can laugh at them all you want just because it's Las Vegas and that they just sort of need another sports market like that for betting purposes. But at the same time, those fans I hear are something else up in Las Vegas. But it'll be interesting to see what it's like in Utah too, because I'm not sure really what that environment's going to be all about. So super psyched, Nick. Super psyched.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah,
Very
so we'll be bringing you tons of content on that trip. We're gonna have one more Blues game this week in Chicago against the Blackhawks, who ever since the Blues beat them after their 8-2 loss that they had against them, they've been on the steady decline. They are now 8th in the Central right now. They're only 3 points out from the Blues, but still, they were in the wild card spot about 2 weeks ago, and they've been steadily declining. So need a win in Chicago, and man, we would love to see some wins. I mean, we could see, Nick, a 5-game win streak from the Blues. So what do you put the odds of that at?
unlikely, but we can dream and think they're going to win every game for the rest of the year. I think it's a possibility. Everything is, but I hope if they beat Chicago, I'm going to be feeling pretty good. If you can win 3 games in a row and get that monkey off the back, I would feel very good about it. Even if they lost one of the two against Utah or Vegas, I would still feel good about being able to win 3 in a row.
And I know we're going to see 2 different goaltenders, which is going to be really nice to see in person, to see how these two really match up against each other. But it'll be interesting to see who they start in Chicago. Again, I bet they go with Hofer again. But same time, though, Bennington's more of an option, I think, than before after what he did against Montreal. So a lot of storylines headed in the week, but we're so excited to be headed to Vegas and Utah to bring you guys some content and to just enjoy some Blues hockey because there is some more hope in 2026, ladies and gentlemen. So we will see you on Friday as we head up to Salt Lake City. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.